Sound is one of the most powerful parts of any media experience, and yet it is often the least noticed. People tend to focus first on what they can see, or on the words being said, but sound is usually what shapes the emotional response underneath it all. It can create tension, comfort, excitement, intimacy, or unease, often before the audience has fully realised why they feel that way. In film, sound helps turn images into atmosphere. A scene may already tell the audience where they are, but sound tells them how that place feels. A quiet room with a distant hum can feel lonely. A low drone underneath a wide shot can suggest danger. A sudden cut to silence can feel just as dramatic as a loud impact. These choices may seem subtle, but they have a huge effect on how a scene is experienced. This is especially noticeable in trailers. Because the trailer has such a short amount of time to make an impression, the sound must work quickly. Music, dialogue, sound effects, silence, and rhythm all help shape the emotional journey. A trailer might begin with some sparse and restrained, then slowly build through pulses, impacts, and rising tension. By the end, the audience has been led through a very carefully designed emotional arc, even in the space of only 2 minutes. In genres like psychological thriller or science fiction, sound often becomes even more important. These genres tend to rely on uncertainty, suspense, and atmosphere. Rather than filling every moment with music, they often use space, texture, and contrast. A faint mechanical sound, a distant voice, a low bass tone, or an unnatural ambience can all create the sense that something is not quite right. Sound becomes part of the storytelling, not simply an addition to it. Radio works differently, but it depends on sound just as much. Without pictures, sound must do everything. It has to create a sense of place, carry the personality of the speaker, and keep the listener emotionally engaged. In radio, the human voice is essential. The way someone speaks, the pace they use, the pauses they leave, and the tone they carry all affect how the audience responds. A warm, close voice can feel personal and direct, almost as though someone is speaking privately to a single listener. A more distant voice can feel formal, detached, or reflective. Even before the meaning of the words has fully landed, the sound of the voice has already created an impression. That is one of the reasons why spoken word audio is so powerful. It feels immediate. Podcasts are built on many of these same ideas. In some ways, they have taken the intimacy of radio and made it even more personal. People often listen to podcasts through headphones while walking, travelling, or sitting alone, and that changes the relationship between the speaker and the listener. The voice feels closer, the experience feels less public and more direct. This is part of what makes podcasts such a strong emotional format. They can feel conversational, thoughtful, and detailed in a way that is quite different from film or broadcast radio. Some podcasts are very simple in their style, built almost entirely around a clear voice and a strong idea. Others are far more produced, with music, archive clips, ambience, interviews, and layered editing. But in all of them, sound remains central to the listener's sense of connection. What is interesting is that emotion in sound is not created only by dramatic effects or obvious musical moments. Very often, it comes from smaller details. It can come from the timing of a pause, the softness of a room tone, the closeness of a microphone, or the contrast between one section and the next. These details may not stand out on their own, but together they help shape the mood of the piece. Music, of course, plays a major role as well. In film especially, music often leads the emotional reading of a scene. A melody can make an image feel hopeful, tragic, tense, or reflective. A repeating rhythm can create urgency. A sustained chord can create suspense. In spoken media, music is often used more carefully, but it still has the ability to frame the voice and suggest an emotional tone without taking over. Silence can be just as important. In all forms of audio, silence creates space. It can suggest thought, uncertainty, tension, or emotional weight. In a world where media is often crowded with information, silence can be one of the most effective tools available. It allows the audience to focus, and it gives meaning to what comes before and after it. There is also something physical about sound. Low frequencies can be felt as much as heard. Reverberation can make a space feel large, empty, sacred, or distant. A dry, close recording can feel intimate and human. Sharp transients can create surprise. Because of this, sound affects people not only intellectually, but physically and emotionally at the same time. That is why sound production involves both technical skill and creative judgment. Good sound relies on strong recording practice, careful listening, balance, editing, and control, but it also depends on taste and intention. Decisions must be made about what should stand out, what should remain subtle, and what kind of emotional effect is being aimed for. This applies across many parts of sound production. In studio recording, microphone choice and placement shape the tone and presence of a sound. In mixing, balance and space determine what the audience pays attention to. In live sound, clarity and control affect how performers and audiences connect in the moment. In radio and podcast production, pacing and vocal tone can completely change how a piece feels. So although film, radio and podcasts are different forms, they all show the same basic truth. Sound shapes emotion by shaping attention. It tells the listener where to focus, how to feel, and how to move through a piece over time. Sometimes it does this in a bold and obvious way. Sometimes it works quietly in the background, but it is always playing a role. Perhaps that is why good sound is so often described as invisible. When it works well, it feels natural. It draws the audience in without asking to be noticed for its own sake. And yet, without it, the emotional life of the work would be greatly reduced. In the end, sound is not simply there to support media. It is one of the main ways media becomes expressive in the first place. Whether through the tension of a trailer, the intimacy of a radio voice, or the closeness of a podcast conversation, sound gives shape to feeling. And that is what makes it such a powerful part of how people experience stories.